And I'll be honest, for a minute there, I didn't think it was ever going to get to my house. Everything just screws or snaps into place. We'll find out how well I did when we get the water in the tank. I really feel like I want to take you along this entire journey, so that's why today's video is necessary. My name is Remy, and today we're coming back with a little update on the Red Sea 625 G2 Plus. Let's start where we last left off, and that was building the Red Sea stand and then placing the tank on the stand. Today we're going to get to some of the hardware, connect the plumbing, place some equipment, and then get the aquascape in. Before we get started, one of the best ways to support the Reef Builders channel is to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you know whenever we post new videos. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. The corals and the fish in the tub are doing great. I've actually added some euphilia lately. I got some luscious torch corals in the mix. I haven't really purchased coral in quite some time as I prepare to fill up the tank that's behind me, but I couldn't resist. These things were beautiful, had to have them in the tank. So after the long leveling process of this stand, and yes, it was long, it was time to get the sump in place and the rest of this stand put together. I went ahead and placed the sump, which for the 625 is quite heavy. You may or may not need another person to help you lift this into place. Plumbing was next, and honestly, for the amount of plumbing that you get, it was kind of intimidating seeing it all plastic wrapped and everything, but this was the easiest part of the build by far. Everything just screws or snaps into place. We'll find out how well I did when we get the water in the tank. I can assure you, after building the stand from the instructions, you will appreciate how straightforward it is for the plumbing. I'm gonna be running the Reefmat 1200, which was one of Jake's favorites and also one of the favorites at the Reef Builder studio. And again, I'm super impressed by the ease of installation on this thing. Feeding the fleece through the reef mat is probably the most complex part of it, but once you get the hang of it, it's super easy. And if you need some help like I did, Red Sea has a great step-by-step video guide on YouTube, so you can check that out. I'll link it in the description below if you have any questions on how to put this all together. I'm a visual learner, so this made it so much easier, and I think the video is all of 2.5 minutes long. Next out of the box is the Red Sea Skimmer, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably not gonna need either of these running for the first couple months of the tank's life, so we'll see how that goes. And honestly, I may not need the skimmer until way later down the road, as the Reefmat's gonna do a lot of the heavy lifting with nutrient export. Take this into consideration, but I did pick out the two bigger options when it came to building the Red Sea Reefer on the website. So these are the two larger options for the Reefmat and skimmer. As for the aquascape, we're gonna be using all Carib Sea rock and sand. And I'll be honest, for a minute there, I didn't think it was ever going to get to my house. So Carib Sea used Yellow, which is a shipping company, to ship a pallet of 500 pounds of rock and sand to my house. And in the midst of all of that, Yellow went bankrupt and went out of business. Thankfully, it had reached the St. Louis terminal, so I was able to go to the terminal and pick that up, and thankfully it all fit in my 4Runner. So like I said, this is 500 pounds of sand and rock, and honestly, the life rock isn't super heavy. It's the sand that really makes this heavy, because several boxes of that, they add up. There was a lot to unload. Included were a couple boxes of life rock shapes, the life rock tree kit they've got, and then a couple large bases, special grade sand, which is my favorite, and 3 large arches. Here's a couple pieces of advice from my first large tank aquascape. If you can, get this off the ground. You don't want to be on your knees and having to bend over to see what the scape is going to look like from the floor. You want to get this up off the ground onto a desk or a table of some sort. Set up a couple sawhorses or something with a piece of plywood. Just get that off the ground so you have a better view. Cut a piece of cardboard to the dimensions of your tank so you know the parameters that you're working in. You can also use PVC pipe. I've seen that done before if you've got some extra PVC pipe, but cardboard is by far going to be the cheapest option. So I ended up using the super glue, accelerator, and sand method. So I had a bunch of sand here. As you can tell, this does not match the Carib Sea Life Rock, which is kind of a purple. But this worked awesome. It was great to kind of tack it together. And for those of you who are impatient like me when it comes to doing stuff like this, and you just kind of want to see what it looks like to tack those two rocks together. You hold it together for 30 seconds to a minute and boom, it's rock solid. I also did pick this up. It was kind of pricey. I think to get it to my house, it was like $32, $33 or something from Glue Masters. This is the thin super glue that they offer, and this works really well with the sand combination. If you're to use a thicker glue, it might just sit up on top of the sand as you're kind of trying to put that all together, so the thin kind of gets into all those cracks and crevices. So what was the method to my madness here? Well, here is where everything started. I wanted to incorporate these two pieces from Kevin Berta over at TSA, who makes all of these rock structures at TSA. You can actually buy them online. There's a whole gallery up there, which is pretty awesome. But he shipped these two structures to my house, and I really wanted to use them in the scape, but as you can see, it doesn't really look good. That's definitely not Kevin's fault. That was because these were made for a different tank, which is where I'm going to keep them. These are for a 4-foot tank that we'll set up in a future project. After chiseling and gluing and moving parts and pieces around and things, I came up with this. And as you can tell, that one structure is just a little too bulky. I sent pictures to Kevin Berta at TSA, to Mark Vanderwall from the Reef Therapy podcast, to my buddy Tyler, who lives here in St. Louis, to Blaine, who is now at TSA, and also Unorthodox Reefer, Jason. And after a lot of opinions, this is what I settled on. All in all, I feel like I have come to the conclusion during this whole entire process that I have taken the aquascape a little too seriously. I've spent too much time thinking about the actual scape. And I think this is something that we all have a tendency to do. We want these rocks to look pretty. But over time, as coral is in the ocean, the coral will become the structure of your aquascape. And because this tank is going to be SPS dominant over time, that is exactly what I want to happen. I want the SPS to be all over this rock structure and make its own kind of aquascape. So the next part of the process for me is going to be going through with the eMarco mortar kit, and I'll be covering up any of the white spots that, happen when you chisel this life rock. Also, I want to reinforce all of those seams that are just made up of the super glue and sand mix. And because I only had white sand, those seams are pretty evident in some places. It'll be a combination of making it more aesthetic and also reinforcing all of those seams and making sure that the structure is nice and good. So once I've got the exact location for these two structures, I'm going to go ahead and tack those down with some epoxy on those bottom base structures there. As while I'm putting them in the tank, I can really feel them slipping and sliding on the glass. So I want to make sure that those don't do any of that once I've got water in the tank. Again, we're trying to prevent any of these rocks from falling and breaking glass. From there, I'm just going to tinker around with some small islands here and there, but I'm happy with the two main structures now, so I think we're complete on the aquascape. The next step is filling this guy up with water, which I'm very excited about. Now, there will be people who do not like this scape. I always feel bad for the people that post up their aquascapes up on Facebook, because honestly, you're gonna get a mix of people that like it and people that don't like it. But in the end, if I've done everything right here, you won't see any rock in a year or two anyway, because the coral will be covering it all up. Also, I will be using the sand in a different build, that 4-foot build I showed you earlier that Kevin Berta scaped with those two structures that he made. That sand's gonna be going in there, so it's not gonna be going to waste. We do go a little bit deeper on this. I've mentioned the Reef Therapy podcast a couple times, but we really do a deep dive into aquascaping in episode number 77, I believe. We talk about the aquascape of this tank, what my original idea was, why that was a dumb idea, and how we ended up here. And we also talk about bare bottom versus sand, and Mark goes into some of his suggestions as well. So if you want a new podcast to listen to, maybe this is your first time hearing about the Reef Therapy podcast, you can find it in audio version wherever you find your podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, those kinds of things. Or we also do video, so this is on YouTube as well. Just search Reef Therapy on YouTube and you can find us there. The first couple videos for any tank build are not the most exciting because you don't have the coral and you don't have the fish and you don't have the life and the movement and stuff like that, but we will get there. I really feel like I want to take you along this entire journey, so that's why today's video is necessary. If you haven't yet and you want to follow along with this story, the Red Sea 625 G2 Plus, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you know whenever we post new videos. Thanks for bearing with me. Last week, we posted a video from our speaker series from Reef Stock Denver 2023. Julian Sprung actually talking about his pond in depth, which is awesome because I know we've seen videos of his pond, but he takes a little deep dive into his shallow water pond right out in front of his house with anemones, and obviously he's got a mangrove tree in there. It's fascinating stuff, so definitely go check that video out. But I had a wisdom tooth pulled last week, so anybody who's ever had wisdom teeth pulled, the recovery isn't the best. It's not the most fun in the world.
Do you think, hold, that I could work on the Today Show?
On the Today Show?
Hold. I was just a fun guy to be around,
But I'm back. I'm ready to get this tank moving, ready to get some water in it. Very excited about it. So thanks for joining me, and I will catch you in the next one.